I'm going to read you this story now. And I thought this story is particularly suitable because it's about children. It's about children who made a difference. It's called Let the Children March. Now, this one is set in America, and it is a story, but it's about real life events. And what happens in this story really did happen, and it was only 57 years ago. So that's not very long ago. There are a lot of people alive now who were alive then. So not long ago at all. And what makes me so sad about it is that these children were protesting, fighting for equal rights. At the time in America, there was something called segregation, which meant that black people and white people were segregated, kept apart. So they had to live separate lives, basically. And black people were treated differently, much worse than white people, which obviously we know is completely wrong. And so there was a lot of people, obviously lots of black people, but also with some support from white people, who fought to change this and to make a difference. They wanted equal rights, as they should have had from the very start. And this was called the Civil Rights Movement, and it was for racial equality. And we know equality is all about treating people equally, which we should always do, regardless of race or gender or anything really. So here we go. And at the time, so I know this book is set in America, but just so that we know, over here in England at the time, we didn't have segregation as such, but that's not to say that racism wasn't a problem, because unfortunately it was at the time. We'd invited a lot of people over. We, speaking as like the country, had invited lots of people from the Caribbean over to come and live in the United Kingdom, and because we needed lots of people, because we'd lost lots of people in the war, and we needed more workers. So really, the United Kingdom should be grateful to have all these nice people come over and do jobs, but instead, sadly, these people, these immigrants, experienced a lot of racism, and that has never really gone away, which is very, very sad and wrong, and is something that we have to fight to change. So, Let the Children March by Monica Clark Robinson and illustrated by Frank Morrison. So, here we go. And set in May 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama. So some of you might know that there's somewhere in England called Birmingham, but there's somewhere in America called Birmingham too. Really, they just use lots of our names. Okay, and it says, I couldn't play on the same playground as the white kids. I couldn't go to their schools. I couldn't drink from their water fountains. There were so many things I couldn't do. In the first week of May 1963, African American families gathered all around Birmingham, Alabama to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak. He was a great leader, a great man. The people had come to plan, to organise, to mobilise and to rally against the discriminatory Jim Crow laws that kept black people separate from white people. That week, thousands of children and teens volunteered to march for their civil rights in the place of their parents who were fearful of losing their jobs. Facing fear and hate, the courage and resilience of the children who marched in these protests changed the world in ways more monumental than they could ever have imagined. Right, okay, and this is a timeline here of everything that happened. I'm going to put a picture of this on the blog for you, okay? Right, so, Let the Children March. 1963, Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't play on the same playground as the white kids. I couldn't go to their schools. I couldn't drink from their water fountains. There were so many things I couldn't do. One warm spring night, my family went to church. We weren't there to have regular services. We were there to hear Dr. King speak. We were there to plan. He wanted to raise an army of peaceful protesters to fight for freedom. His brown eyes flashing fire and love, Dr. King told us the time had come to march. If I march, Mama said, I'll lose my job sure enough. I can't march, Daddy said. I got a family to feed. The weight of the world rested on our parents' shoulders, but this burden, this time, did not have to be theirs to bear. You see, if their parents lose their jobs, then they wouldn't have any money for their family to feed them or look after them. I don't have a boss to fear, my brother said, or a job to lose. We can march this time. We'll be Dr. King's army, I said. We'll be fine, Daddy, I promised. Don't worry, Mama. So there they are. They're going to be very brave, and they're going to march because they believed in what they were doing as well. Dr. King didn't like children being put in harm's way. He was a daddy too, after all. But he said that though we were young, we were not too young to want our freedom. Let the children march. They will lead the way. On May 2nd, a sunny Thursday, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, we all met at the church, dressed in our best, feet ready. In a silence so loud that all I could hear was my racing heart, we began to walk. Hand in hand we marched, so frightened, yet certain of what was right for freedom. The path may be long and troubled, but I'm going to walk on. So there they go. So they start the march, and you can see they've got signs here. You can also call them placards. And they are marching for their freedom. Would I be hurt? Would we be heard? Would it all be worth it in the end? I wanted to run from the angry faces in the crowd, run from danger, run from fear. Boys and girls, brothers and sisters, cousins and friends, on and on we marched. We marched, we marched, singing the songs of freedom. 1,000 strong we came. 1,000 children marching. Look at that. They are so strong, so brave, so determined to march for their freedom. And it's rather upsetting. Hate dogged my heels all that day, its yellow canine teeth sharp. But courage walked by my side and kept me going. Disperse or you'll be jailed, the police shouted the first day. Disperse or you'll get wet, the police shouted the second day. Disperse or we release the dogs, the police shouted the third day. We did not disperse. We kept on marching. We wouldn't stop until things started to change. So though they were threatened, they did not give up, they did not give in. Hundreds of us went to jail on the first day, and even more on the second. My turn wasn't until the third day. So that's the police van taking them away. After I was sprayed by water stronger than anything I've ever felt, rough hands pushed me forward and I fell to my knees in the police wagon. I was going to jail. Dr. King reassured our parents. Don't worry about your children, he said. They're going to be all right. Don't hold them back if they want to go to jail, for they are doing a job for not only themselves, but for all of America and for all mankind. That night, crowded into a cell too small for even half of the kids, we sang, "We shall overcome, ain't gonna let nobody turn me round," and "Freedom is coming." Our parents couldn't be there with us, but still we sang, wrapped in the proud and loving arms of our ancestors. So they didn't let it get them down. They knew they were right and they were strong together. I was still in jail, but we heard that the next day and the next more kids marched. The water hoses they used to sting us could not stop our fierce tide. The path may be long and troubled, but I'm going to walk on. And there they are. They would not let themselves be stopped. Turn the other cheek, we had been taught. Show love where there is hate. The world watched as hate bruised us, but for 7 days we walked only in love. The jails swelled to bursting, and even President Kennedy took notice. Daddy said the president received letters and calls about us from all over the world. One march would become a memory, a small part of a larger story, but we had been heard and the seeds of revolution were sown. A revolution can change the world. 2 days and nights I stayed in jail, some stayed even longer. When I left, I was tired and sore and my best dress was ripped, but my smile was as wide as the Mississippi River. I had made a difference. I'm so proud of you, baby girl, Mama said. Your march was what made them see. With nothing more than our feet, voices and courage, we had done what others could not. Change was right around the corner. We felt it like a cool breeze in an Alabama August. On May 10th, the great news rang out. Dr. King had reached an agreement with the white leaders of the city. Desegregation would begin. 1 month later, I was playing on a playground I'd never been allowed to play on before. 2 months later, my family ate at a diner we'd never been allowed to eat in before. Our march made the difference. We children led the way. Singing the songs of freedom, 1,000 strong we came. And there we go. That is the end of that story. Let the children march.